Pardon me for anyone watching. I'm in the middle of getting everything set up and ready so that I can okay, that should be about it. And welcome. If you're one of the YouTube watchers, just be patient a little bit. I'll have in the description below a notation on exactly when I get started on the actual processes. Other than that, well, I'm kind of certain that tonight we'll have a few new visitors. And I think it's time to go ahead and activate the improved lighting. Yeah, right! Okay. Now, as I mentioned in the description, tonight I will be making orcs. I might repeat a lot of what I say in this initial opening, simply because I'm going to have a lot of people showing up right over here in the chat on Twitch. Now, thing about orcs. There's any number of cajillions of interpretations of orcs. I mean, you've got the Bonner orcs, which I don't think I can pull one up right off the top of my processor, but Bonner, who notably inspired the 80s and 90s Warhammer orcs, and through them the Warhammer 40k orcs, and through them the Warcraft orcs, who then evolved into yet another form of orc. Meanwhile, D&D orcs originally were pigmen. Yeah, they had pig heads. Almost all of the humanoids were animal-headed humanoids of some kind. So they had pig heads. And they started getting more and more cartoony, and they inspired the Gamorrean Guards on Star Wars. Yep. Meanwhile, you go to Tolkien's orcs directly, and then you look at the goblins created for the Rankin Bass Hobbit. And they look like cartoon versions of Bonner's orcs. Because back then, oh, hello, Blue! Back then, Bonner's orcs were pretty much starting to become the thing. But then when you cut ahead to modern day, and when you look at the orcs in the Lord of the Rings movies, they look the way Tolkien originally described them, as being elves that had been warped and twisted by the power of Morgoth. Well, as some of you may have seen, I have already created one orc. This is a sergeant, so to speak. And this is the style that I tend to prefer for my orcs. Kind of a Warhammer Bonner-esque style. And let me go ahead and pull up my camera controls so I can zoom in a little bit on this guy. Yeah. This is the Sergeant Orc. And tonight, I'm going to be making 2 of his troops and the big boss. Hey, Brandon. So yeah, today is Orky Day. Oh, yeah. 520. Now, just to show you the size real quick, this is the Sergeant. This is the confused rogue we made last week. As you can see, he is bigger. Oh, and no, Baloo, these are all printed on my CR10. These are FDM printed. As you can see, he's bigger than the confused rogue, but not hugely so. The average orc will probably be about his size, but stockier. And the big boss will be as much bigger than this guy as this guy is bigger than the regular orcs. So let me go ahead and put these back up. So yeah, I print these miniatures on a standard FDM printer, a CR10. I use 0.08 millimeter layer height. I use 100% infill, but that doesn't even matter because I'm using 99 top and bottom layers. For some reason, that actually makes it print better. The end result is that's actually kind of heavy. The Orc Sergeant and the big boss will probably be even heavier. So, alright, now we have just Baloo and Brandon in here. I'm hoping that anyone else that comes by will at least say hi. But tonight's broadcast will be much longer than usual. Tonight's broadcast will be much longer because we're making 3 orcs, 2 soldiers and a boss. 3. Now, both of the soldiers will have the same gear as the sergeant there. A shield and the haka. The boss, we're not just going to sculpt the boss. We're going to make some of his equipment in 3D Studio Max before we begin actually sculpting on it. So yes, this means that I'm making parts specifically for this figure. So this will be a really long broadcast. It might be, it usually takes me about an hour to an hour and a half to sculpt a simple figure. That's 2 hours for the troops. It'll be at least another 2 to 3 hours for the big boss. I'm also going to be experimenting with ways to make chainmail. You see, I made a female dwarf. And this female dwarf came out really nicely. You can actually see the chainmail on the center of her chest. Although this particular printing of it, the mouth collapsed, so the head looks horrible. But again, this is FDM. And you can make out the male on her chest. Like I said, ignore the face, it collapsed. This is a failed print. So, the problem was the method that I used to make it won't work on a full hauber. So, what I'm doing is I'm going to be experimenting with ways to do it properly. Okay, it is 7 after. I want to go ahead and get knee-deep into this. So let's go ahead and switch to Daz Studio. Yay! Once again, you two already know this, Brandon and Baloo. And yes, Brandon, Billy Rubin did just get a photon. She's starting off with some of her jewelry. Okay, Baloo, I'm not sure exactly how long it printed because I printed it overnight. I have a tendency to prefer to do things like that. If it's going to be any longer than a couple of hours, I'll print it overnight just because I get so anxious to see the end results. I'm sitting there. It got another layer done. It got another layer done. So, yeah. Meanwhile, as you two know, this is a figure that I have created out of completely my own geometry. I mean, I'm perfectly willing to show the wireframe here. This is my own custom geometry figure intended for making miniatures. Now, while it does have some good topology in some areas, like the shoulders, it does not have that great of a topology in this area, or around the eyes. But I did what I could. And again, as you two know, it has special dials. But this isn't just for you guys, this is for anyone else that comes in. These dials let me go ahead and transform the figure into an elf, or a halfling, or an ogre, where all you can see is like neck down, or a basic orc. And hey, Outcast, welcome to the stream. So, we also have at least one lurker, at least one person sitting here watching, and hi, nice to see you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead with this orc, and I'm going to load in round shield and the Orky Haka into the right hand. Now the problem is the hands moved but the props didn't, so I need to actually move these props. So I'm going to select that shield and I'm going to move it ever so slightly. Actually, let's go ahead and go from the back view and use this. Okay, so we need to make sure we have it in the hand, and then front view. Okay, perspective view. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Now we go for the Haka. We're going to do the same thing to it. We're going to move it so that it's actually in the hand properly. Like right now, as you can see, the fingers are sticking out of it. We don't want that. We want it to kind of be there. Now let's look at the back view. And I think it's pretty clear that it's almost in the spot we need to be. There. Perspective view, zoom in on it. And just a little bit more there. Okay. Now this is our basic unposed orc troopa. Now another thing we're going to want on this orc troopa is he's going to be wearing an armor of some kind, so we're going to go ahead and give him this. What this does, it acts as the bottom portion of a tunic. When I bring it into ZBrush, I blend the edges in, so that it ends up looking like a tunic or a hauberk or any other mid-thigh medieval garment. The next thing we've got to do, I'm forgetting one of the more notable aspects of being an orc. And that is the tusks. So I take those tusks and I parent them to the jaw. There's a complexity about the tusks that makes me have to do that last. And here we have our bulky. We don't want him too muscular, because even as he is, he's a little bit more muscular than a human. And then what we're going to do is deal with the fact that I have a feline interloper, as you can see. Yay. Oh! Beeps. Down you go, Fuzzbutt. Yeah. Okay. Now the next thing that we do is we decide what kind of pose do we want him in. Well, first, I'm actually going to save this, because that way I can call this back up when we go to make the second one. Initial orc. Now, orcs in general tend to be, they crouch, they tend to be more bandy-legged than humans, so their standard stance pose is slightly different. So, we're going to go to the parameters dial. I'm using the dials instead of the little manual twisty things, because I get a bit more control. And we're also going to make sure to be able to reduce the amount of distortion from twisting the thighs. Because, as you can see, as I twist the thigh, it's pulling a lot more than it should, especially on the skirt. So, I'm kind of undoing the twist on the skirt. Just to bring it forward a bit, and there. Now, next thing I'm going to do is bend the calves back a bit. Just a bit, actually a little bit more than what the twist did. Because what we're going to do is we're then going to bend the feet forward. And then we go to a front view, and we're going to select both feet and focus in on them because we want them kind of flat. Okay, this one needs to be twisted a little. Oh, wrong way. It needs to be, yeah. And we're going to drop it to the floor, D. Now, we need to twist the legs because wrong one. Okay, now what we have here is we have a problem that he's going to be forward and off-center, except there's something about poses. You never have your hips perfectly parallel to the ground or to your shoulders. Because if you do, the end result will be it looks stiff and unnatural. We're going to bend it forward a little bit. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and go to the front view again. And we're going to grab this foot and we're going to drag him up, so that the center of the heel is roughly equal to where the center of the heel is there. Then we're going to pivot it until it's about in the right spot. Okay, it's looking like that. Despite my attempts, this foot's still not quite high enough. So we're going to go ahead and drag it up a little bit more. Okay, that looks like it might be good. And let's bend the toe just a little bit, simply because the tip of the toe is sticking down, and we drop it. We go back to perspective view, and the center of gravity is now above the feet. Now, let's bend the chest and abdomen at the same time forward just a little bit. Not too much. And then side to side it a little bit too much. Yeah. Just enough to break the symmetry there, and just a little bit of twist. It's already looking a lot more of a natural stance than what we saw before. Okay, this one is kind of putting more weight on his right foot than his left, so he's probably getting ready for more of a strike with his shield lowered a little bit. So, let's go ahead and let's bend the collar down just a little and bring it forward just a little. Let's bend the arm. Oh, no. Twist that so it's a little bit closer to the back of the arm. Yeah. The reason the handle is where it is and the angle it is on this shield is because of how shields like the Scottish Targ were held. They were held by a handle in the center, but for them they held it almost front on. So you would fight like this. Obviously the hands wouldn't be that close, I just had to do it so that they would be visible in the camera. And hello, Spooksy, I guess? Yeah. It's an orc, he doesn't care about that. All he cares about is hitting things with his big hacky sword thing. We're gonna twist the arm to bring it a bit flat. We're gonna bend it. Let's twist it, and we're going to unbend the arm because, like I said, he's getting ready to attack. So now we twist. We're actually going to raise the shoulder a little bit, not a lot, because a lot of what we're going to do to him will be harder if that shoulder is closer. And we twist the upper arm. Let's twist this a bit more. And he's going to turn his head slightly. Well, way too much. Okay, his head is turned. We're going to open the mouth just a little. No, that's too much. Yeah. Okay. Now, just for the sake of making it a little bit easier on the printing, we're going to bend it like that. There'll be less area that really needs support. But he's not angry enough for an orc. So let's zoom in. And I've actually put in bones for the brows. So we're going to... And then we're going to raise this one. We're going to Z-rotate it so that it's... Now, admittedly, this level of detail, those eyes probably won't be able to be differentiated on an FDM printer, but there's plenty of people who are using, printers like the Photon. And bottom view. The reason I'm doing a bottom view is because I'm thinking we can make it a little bit more dramatic of a pose. The perspective. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go back to a front view. We're going to have to bend this foot again. And yeah. Now we're going to do what's called pinning it. Pin translation. Select this one. Pin translation. And we're going to select the hip. And what we're going to do is going to move the hip down and to the side a little. And the reason for this is because we wanted a bit more of an action pose. Yeah, that's a lot more dynamic looking. Even though it was just a tiny, slight, slimy. It means tiny and slight change. And we go back to the front view so that we can, first of all, unpin all of these, and then we got to rotate them again. Twist the foot. Bend it back up a bit. And twist the foot again. And come on. Yeah, the not enough control as if I'm doing that. Yeah, that's why I tend not to do the gizmos as much as I do the dials. And then bend it a bit more, and we drop it to the ground. Not a lot of drop, but enough. And we have our first orc posed, but not sculpted. This is just the base geometry on which we will make our Orc Horde. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to hide the weapon, the shield, and the tusks, but not the skirt. And I'm going to export this. Now, sadly, you're not going to be able to see the windows that come up from this, simply because that's how XSplit captures things. And this is going into our... This is Orc body... Oh no, Orc 1 body. We want to keep them separate. Orc 1 body. I'm going to accept that. And then we're going to hide the body and the skirt. And we're going to make the shield, hacker, and tusks visible. And we're going to call this. It only exports what's visible, but it exports everything that's visible. Orc 001 props. Okay, now that we've done that, we're going to go ahead and select all of it and hit delete. And then go over here. We're going to open recent, initial orc. And we has our orc. We're going to get back to this when it's time to make number 2. And hello, Cameron. Yes, a sword would be held with the blade alongside the plane of the arm, because as however the hand is held, the edge goes the length of the arm. In his case, he's holding it like this. Let's go ahead and go on my seat. He's holding it like this, but obviously with a single edge blade, that edge is in line with the knuckles, and I keep hitting things with this darn thing. Oops. Now, one thing I have to say about a lot of these weapons. Alright. This is a nice little, well, it's a fictional fantasy dagger in a Nordic style. Nice little leaf blade. From the point of view of modern day, this is a moderately decent, average proportioned dagger. Modern day. Fantasy. If you put this in the hands of a miniature, it will look like he's holding a needle. You've got to make paddle swords. You've got to make, Final Fantasy Buster swords darn near. That's why his sword is so big, but it's a one-handed sword. I mean, it's the same prop and shield I used on this guy. Although, since he's bigger, the sword actually ended up being bigger, and I added on that nice little skull onto the shield. Now, what I'm going to do, it's now time for me to take it into a different program. To be exact, ZBrush. Now, I understand most people don't have ZBrush, and that's okay, because most of what I'm going to be talking about, you're going to be able to do with almost any sculpting program, including Well, just as an example, Sculptress. Mudbox, Mudbox probably, and maybe, I don't know, because I've heard mixed and match about this, maybe the sculpting aspect of Blender. Meanwhile, let's go ahead and load in the orc body. Yeah, this is how it ends up in ZBrush. We're then going to go to Subtool and we're going to append another polymesh and we're going to import the props. Now the reason for this is so that if I need to, I can turn off the props just by doing that. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go to geometry. We're going to subdivide it a couple times, and then we're going to do something that is kind of unique to ZBrush. It's called Dynamesh. And what this does, it basically, if I looked at the geometry right now, oh look, there I am. You'll notice that the geometry for the stomach, the polygons are a lot smaller than the ones for the skirt, and they overlap and they blend and all of that nonsense. And if I do this Dynamesh, however, now when I zoom in and turn on, they're all roughly the same size. And they don't blend so much. And now it means it's time for me to bring in my Wacom tablet. I do not need that. Okay. And hello, Mr. Tangable. It is easier to print, but at this point in time, what's more important is it's easier to sculpt on. And so I have my wonderfully 3D printed stylus holder, and I'm going to smooth out the areas where for example, where the belly meets the bottom of the, that's another good, areas that just need a little bit of smoothing. So that now, once I'm done with this, that will look like it was always one piece, like a tunic being worn, or in this case, a hauberk. Nope. Get up here. Good girl. Yes, I know it's strange for cats to respond to commands, but some of them do. Anyway. Blend it in. In case you're wondering and have ZBrush, this is just a standard smooth brush. I hold down Shift and you'll see that the circle changes from red to blue when I do. And now when I stroke over, it starts averaging out the polygons with its nearest neighbors. And that causes it to smooth. It's like the equivalent of blurring something in Photoshop. But it's doing it with polygons. And there's a little bit of a wrinkle there. Let's get rid of that. Now I've got a small problem here. The arm's in the way. Well, fortunately, if I hit Control-Shift and tap a body part, it hides everything but it. And then when I click it again, I can now hide pieces. So I can hide parts of the model to make it easier to sculpt on that area of the model. And when I pull up, I can see there's, again, a little bit of smoothing probably needed down here. Now the thing is, the chest is going to be part of the tunic, so I'm going to smooth out where it meets where the pectorals meet, and make it more like there's cloth over top of it rather than it's, the pectorals with the space and all that. And that includes up here. Now, the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and bring the arm back. If I give it a full zoom out, you can see how I mean about how now that looks like the bottom of the tunic on his hips. No, Spuck. I'm not even going to map it. It's going to be completely raw geometry. This is intended for printing, and really and truly, including even mapping coordinates would be a problem. But there's one thing I really need to do real quick, and so I don't forget it. I need to introduce yet another subtool that is a sphere. And yes, that sphere is huge. So we're going to go to deformation, and we're going to shrink it. And what's going to happen with it is I'm going to go ahead and let's move topological and make the draw size huge. I'm going to move it inside the head so that it fills the mouth. The reason for this is because if I didn't, then you'll have problems as your slicer tries to print the inside of the mouth, and you're either going to have outrageous supports to remove, or you're going to have a complete collapse. And now let's just kind of drag it out just to make sure we fill it. Whoop. And we're going to try and drag. And then we're going to smooth out the areas that kind of poke through a little. And for right now, that's all we're going to do with this. Now, after we get done with everything else, we might go back in and do some tweaking on the exact shapes. But now let's go back to this guy. And we're going to go to inflate. And what inflate does, it moves the vertex in the direction of its normals. Now what normals are, basically, let's turn the back on. Where every corner is, what's called a vertex, there's a direction. And that direction is perfectly perpendicular to the average of the faces where it meets. I mean, like I said, a perfectly perpendicular on a plane, it's sticking straight out. On a convex shape, it'd be sticking in this way. On a concave shape, sorry, on a convex shape, it'd be sticking out this way. Now with inflate, we get, let me go ahead and reduce the size. Oh, I need to make sure I have this open because there's a thing called lazy mouse, and a lot of the various brushes have it on by default, and I turn it off unless I need it. Anyway, the reason we're inflating the lip is, number one, it's a lip. Number two, so that it kind of blends a bit more with the sphere we put in the mouth. I'm going to go ahead and turn off that. As you can see, it helps keep the differentiating a bit better and stuff and like that. Now, the next thing we need to do is we need to go ahead and subdivide this quite a bit, because we need to make sure that we have enough polygons here, because we're going to be using this base geometry to basically determine our clothing. Now the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make a collar and armbands that aren't really a collar and armbands. They're actually going to be the sleeve and, neck piece, neck opening of the tunic and or hauberk. I say and or because I might end up making it male hauberk, and by male I mean chainmail, not opposite of female, and I might end up making it a quilted gambeson. Alright, what we're doing is I'm masking off polygons. If I tried to sculpt right now, anything that is currently that slightly darker shade of gray, like down here on the upper arms, would not move. Meanwhile, let's go ahead and we're going to hide the hands and the fingers on this arm because they're in the way. And we're going to go down here and we're going to... Oh, one thing I need to do, I need to focal shift. Make sure that this is... And then we're going to... Okay. I'm not going all the way around the neck simply because at some point the detail is assumed. Now, actually I think I can go all the way around the neck. Yeah. I couldn't on the sergeant, but that was because his arms were up. And now we go here. We're gonna... Now, the reason why I selected and masked off all of these points is because of how I create clothing in this method. First of all, we go unveil those parts again. Frame. In ZBrush, you can take the masked parts and extract them, or what you're doing is you're cloning them and then giving them a thickness, so that the end result, 0.03, looks like that. And the inner edges of these pieces I'm going to be blending into the figure so that the rest of it looks like, like a collar and like the sleeves of a short-sleeved gambeson. I think I'll do with a gambeson for this guy. The other guy will do male. Mr. Tangible, I've been doing 3D graphics in general since for almost literally 20 years. Since some of the earliest initial beta tests for a program called Rhino 3D. I've been doing 3D graphics professionally since about 2001. And I've been doing sculpting for miniatures for about a month and a half. But ZBrush I've been using since version 2.5 in like 2006. Now, the next thing is, there's one problem with doing what we just did. I'm going to bring it in, and I'm going to show you the polygons on these sections, these new sections. Oh, it's not showing. Alright. Basically, the problem is these are only one polygon, stretched very, very long. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and, as we did with everything else, we're going to dynamesh it. But we're going to dynamesh it a lot lower res than we dynamesh the body. And what we're going to do, let's bring the size of the brush up, and we're going to smooth the outer edge. Okay, we're gonna have to hide the body for a moment, and we're definitely gonna have to hide the inner mouth thing. Okay. Now the thing is, after we do this, this is just a very rough blending that we're gonna be doing, because we're going to be going ahead and doing another Dynamesh. Okay. And there we go. Alright. Turn it back on and zoom in. Frame. Okay. That didn't do as much as I was hoping it would, so we're going to have to go and use move topological again. Bring it up a little bit. We're going to bring in the bits and pieces of the sleeves here, so they're a little bit closer to the body. We're going to leave the outside edge where it is. And what we're end up doing is this is going to end up being a lot more like a sleeve. And once again, we're using just the base geometry of the figure itself for the majority of its clothing and, in this case, armor and stuff like that. We're going to drag this down. We're going to drag it back so much, not so much in. And we're going to have to shrink it to properly deal with this. Now, before we fuse it and Dynamesh it, we have to do one primary thing, one very important thing. We're going to re-emphasize the facial details. A lot of these facial details went bye-bye. Let me go ahead and reduce the intensity of the smooth. Oh. And to smooth out some of these areas that got jagged under the Dynamesh. Now most of the details we're going to go back in and redo. But for right now we need to have them smooth so we have a nice smooth, well, for lack of a better term, canvas to work from. Now we're going to use a tool called Slash. Slash does basically a deep cut. We're going to make it smaller and we're going to outline the eyes. Outline the eyes to try and emphasize them a bit more than usual. And what that will do is when it prints, the eyes will definitely be, they'll stick out. It's obviously exaggerated from what happens in reality, but they'll stick out more and it'll be easier on the painter to identify, oh yeah, there's the eye. I'm putting a little bit of smoothing just to make them a bit more round. And this part right here needs to be frame. Okay, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to make the mouth part visible because we're going to go ahead and blend it in too. And I'm moving it up. Oh, I got to make sure that I have the... Shoot. I forgot to do the left arm. Yeah, I got to do the left arm sleeve. So let's go back to move topological. And let's bring that scale back up. Yeah, there we go. And let's blend this cuff in. I'm pulling it up and in to, again, to make it hang a bit more like a sleeve. Now, I was talking about this earlier before people really started coming in, but there's a lot of different ways for an orc to be represented. I mean, you've got the classic, irredeemably evil monstrosities from Tolkien and most D&D campaigns. You got your tribal, they don't like society because society has rejected them, like the orcs from Elder Scrolls. And you've got the Warhammer, not Warhammer, yeah, you got the Warhammer orcs, you got your Warcraft orcs. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to merge down. And I'm going to merge these with themselves so that now we have another beast, another single surface. But it's not single surface yet, it's just one object. It's like intersecting geometries. We don't want that. We just want the outer skin. And so in ZBrush we'll get your Dynamesh. Oh, I forgot to do one thing. Oh, no, we want those. No, we want it before the Dynamesh. There we go. Okay, so what we're going to do is let's polygroup auto groups. What that'll do is that'll polygroup by contiguous geometry. And I can select this. And then zoom out, select the whole thing, bring them back. And now geometry, we're going to divide it. Actually let's go ahead and split unmasked points. There we go. Now we got to select this, we got to subdivide it because it's so low it's going to end up looking blocky. Send this polish 100. There we go. Now we can select our orky body, merge down, and then bring it into geometry and Dynamesh. Now we're going to do the same thing that we did back on the bottom of the tunic. We're going to shrink it a little bit, and we're going to smooth out where it meets and make it into the actual Now, one thing I should note is that while I print on a FDM printer, I know a lot of people are using resin printers, so I don't want to cheat on the details. I don't want intersecting geometries. I don't want details that look right when printed on an FDM, but don't on a resin printer. And let's move this up here. Blend in the color. And over here. And shrink a little bit. The end result is our orc is wearing a tunic of some kind. This could be a tunic or it could be a hauberk. In fact, at this point in time, I could save this as a Z tool. I'm going to go ahead, before I do this, hit the geometry and subdivide the geometry of the weapons until I can't see the polygons on the shield anymore. Okay. I can actually export this as a subtool, or as a Z tool, and then later come back in and give it a slightly different look. Like tonight I'm going to be making it into padded armor with a disc, kind of like the big old belt buckle on our sergeant from earlier in the week. You know, let me zoom in again. Come on. You know, the big old disc belt buckle. But I might later want to revisit this particular sculpt, and instead of the quilt that I'm going to be putting on it, I might want to make it male. I can do that. I'm actually going to wait before I do that though, because I still need to kind of smooth out things. And hello, object. Welcome. Yes, Mr. Tangible, I use Ziltech Deep Green PLA primarily. The main reason why I use the deep green, and that's, well, best demonstrated. Let me move that. And that. Trying to get access to something here. Okay, here we go. I'm actually going to go ahead and very briefly bring you back to the main camera to demonstrate why. This is their red. This, by the way, is a dice tower. You drop dice in the mouth and they come out the butt. Anyway, the problem is, until I got my new lighting, if I tried to take a picture of this, you wouldn't be able to see a darn thing on the details, because it's such a saturated and bright red. So what I did instead is, with the green, let me put this back up here. With the green, well, let's pick up this. You can see every little bit of detail because the shadows are darker. It's not as saturated. And you can make out the details a lot better. I mean, just even from back here, you can see the muscles and all the other details. Unfortunately, Ziltech does not make a gray besides their silver, which is an abrasive color. So I pretty much stick to the deep green that you're seeing these miniatures in. And it's just a coincidence, but that deep green is only slightly lighter of a green than the color of what's called green stuff. What's green stuff, you ask? Green stuff is actually it's a substance, it's an epoxy ribbon that is well, the purpose of it is it's originally made for fixing leaks in pipes. It's green, it's blue on one side, yellow on the other side, and you mix it as much as you can, and once you've got it all mixed, you can then take it and put it in a position, and within about an hour, hour and a half, it'll cure nice and hard. No, sorry, take that back. In about an hour and a half, it'll cure to an extent, but it won't be nice and hard. If you've got something like a kiln, I guess you could call it, what we used to do is we used to take a coffee can and we would put a desk lamp with a light bulb into it. And then you've got, basically it'll cause it to cure a whole lot faster. And the thing is that that stuff was used to make the basic figures by almost every company until relatively recently. Games Workshop, the Grenadier, Ralparthide, Rackham. In fact, a lot of them, like Rackham, still use the green stuff. Yeah, they use the green stuff, you understand? And again, just by pure coincidence, this deep green is very similar in color to the green stuff. So, let's go ahead and take it back into the program. Yeah, let's see. I'm not a big fan of white, for the simple fact that it's hard to photograph. It's hard to show how the figure came out. Alright, now the next thing we're going to do, basing on this guy, is we're going to make a belt. Okay? The belt will be underneath the kind of belly shield, I guess you could say. So let's go ahead and select. Now, unselect that. And that's where our belt's going to be. That's a bit too, goofy. We don't want it in the middle, but there. Okay. So, right about here. And then we unselect the sleeve that got selected there. Okay, yeah, that's about right for where the belt's going to be. This is what is going to hold on our big thingy. And honestly, except for a that's pretty much all we really need for the belt. And before we put the shield on, we need to do one significant thing. We need to bring out the underside of this peck a bit more, because it's looking a little bit too looking a little bit, come on, there we go. There we go. And bring the standard down quite a lot and turn off lazy mouse. Bring them up. Bring it just a bit, just enough to where it doesn't have an underhang like cloth would. And then we're gonna smooth it. Okay. And the same thing over here. Smooth it. There, now it looks a little bit more like tunic and less like musculoture. And actually, let's go ahead and solve that problem that we have, a similar problem we have on the back. Zoom in, move it, and let's, right there. What that is, that's an artifact from the rigging. Some of you came in late. What I do is I have a base figure, and that figure is in a program called Daz Studio. This is the base figure unposed. I created the geometry in 3D Studio Max. That's how I also created the weapon and the shield. I rig it and pose it in Daz Studio, this one here. And then I do my sculpting in ZBrush. Now, let's frame it. And now I'm actually going to hide the belt. Unmask those parts. And then I'm going to just make a very big selection on the belly. Let's go ahead and hide this. Let's go ahead and hide the arm. Alright, that's not going to work. Let's go ahead and let's see if we can get it to hide the selected. I forget how to do the hide selected. Visibility. Oh, oops. So we take masking and invert it. And visibility, hide points. Yeah. Now, there we go. It's not in the way anymore. We go ahead, we start working on where the belly plate will be. It's not, I actually, there's a feature called lazy mouse that actually helps curve a lot of things like this. I chose not to use it. The reason being is because this is made by orcs. It's not going to be perfectly nicely smooth and measured and all of that. So now we're going to change this to 0.06. Thick, extract. Accept. Now you'll notice it kind of squinched down. We don't like that. I'm going to make this a good bit bigger. And we're going to remove topological again, and we're going to bring it up. Oh, oops. Deselect. Grab there and move up. And then move this out a little bit, and this out a little bit. Then we're going to grab, make it even bigger. We'll grab the bottom and bring it in just a little bit. We only made it so big because of the presence of the belt. That's better, and that actually kind of looks all nice and clunky. We go to geometry, we're going to dynamesh it again. And now that that's done, it's divided. And once again, now we're going to give it a border. We're going to do that. We're going to go back to inflate. We're going to shrink the brush down quite a bit. And we're going to turn lazy mouse on with that nice little 30 pixel length. And then I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to basically trace around the edge. And that's not enough. So let's bring that up to about 30. Oh. Keep it inside the geometry of the front end. And this will not only smooth out the outline to make it look more, intentional, it will also give us a border. Now we're going to take and we're going to recreate the slash. We need to increase the lazy radius to roughly the same. We're going to shrink the slash. Oh, that's way too deep. We just want this to be an emphasis. not a engraving. Now the thing is, on the Orc Sergeant I made earlier in the week, I engraved a face onto the belly plate. I'm not going to do that here. The reason being is because, you know, the shield and the belly, someone might want to have their own personal insignias to paint, like to keep each unit separate. They'll have different markings on the belly and the shield. Now, let's do one more thing to kind of unify this with the Sergeant before we start carving details on the tunic, and that's we're going to make a shoulder plate. The Sergeant has a shoulder plate on his left shoulder, so we're going to make a shoulder plate. Let's make it smooth. Now, the Sergeant shoulder plate has a nice large neck protecting piece coming up top on this edge. We're not going to give that to this guy, simply because he's a low-ranking schmuck.
He's a foot slugger, he is. His whole purpose is sitting there and taking the hits, so the knobs don't have to. You got me?
Let's drop this down, back down to 0.03. Extract. Accept and unmask and unmask. Okay, now let's just make sure we got it all. We got that selected. We're going to geometry. We're going to dynamesh it. And then we're going to divide it. And now we're going back to inflate. And we're going to do much the same thing we did with the belly plate, but not quite as large. Simply because, yeah, we don't need to. I should note that when you're doing something like this, the faster the stroke, the smoother the stroke, even without lazy brush. And with lazy brush, it makes things a lot easier. There are some things you want a slow, steady hand on, but things like this, not so much. Alright, that's too small. We're going to make it a little bit bigger. And you'll notice it's a lot easier to trace around the edge now. And now we'll take, oh, not move top block, we want slash, there it is. Shrink it a little bit, and we're gonna follow deep in once again to emphasize the border of the plate. Okay. Now, we frame out. We have our basic orky thingy. Oh, we need to make boots. We don't have to do the boots now. I mean, we could theoretically go back in and add the boots in towards the end. But I think it would be a good idea to go ahead and do them now. Let's go ahead and hide everything but the orky. And what we're going to do is we're going to do something similar to how we made the sleeves. Orcs aren't exactly known for being the best cobblers, you know. So let's go ahead. They basically are wearing tubes of leather. So they won't exactly have like a cuff on their boots or anything like that. Okay, I need to bring it up and around. Let's move it into position. And then let's zoom in. And we're going to deselect. Make sure we deselected everything that's not part of what we want. Ah, there's a spot. Oh. Now let's turn off the lazy mouse. So turn off the lazy mouse. Oh. And we shrink it back and let's fill this back in. Okay. Frame. Okay, now, as usual, we're going to go ahead and extract it. And accept. And dynamesh it. We're going to go ahead and blend it in before we do anything else. Just a little bit smoothing down near the bottom. And alright, now let's go ahead and go to the move and just start blending it, pulling it in to where we want it to be. This is something we're going to deal with towards the end, the actual smoothing it in with the rest of the leg. This is something that's not hugely important because most people actually don't pay much attention to the boots unless there's something weird about them. I mean, for those of you who play Warhammer 40k, think how simple the Space Marine boots were in the early days. They were basically a cone with a foot poking out. But that was the style, so nobody said anything. Hey, I remember when my Space Marines had beaks. And they all had them and they liked them. We liked them like that. I tell you, some of these days, oh, you and your Primaris Marines and your Mary Sues and actually having Primarchs on the battlefield instead of being lost to legend and lore. Oh, I tell you. And an elf and a human. I mean, oh my god, they're working on making an Eldar god come back to life? What's all this stuff about? Yay! Yeah, kids these days, I tell you, they're fluff. Just makes you want to wonder what's going on inside the head of the authors. And okay, now we frame. And now he's wearing boots instead of being barefoot. And hello, Mr. Square Peg. Sorry if I took so long. As you can see, it's a little busy. Right now, it's been about an hour and 20 minutes, and I'm about 80 to 90% done with the first of the orcs. And let me go ahead and hide those. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to start doing a slash. A lot of slashing. A lot of slashing, I tell you. Because what we're going to do, we're going to make it a bit bigger, go down deeper. We're going to make, let's make sure that it's got the lazy mouse on. Yeah. We're going to make this It's not deep enough. Too big, too wide, and not deep enough. We're gonna make this into... still not deep enough. We're gonna make this into what's called a gambeson. What that basically means, it's a hawbuck, but instead of being made out of metal, it's a whole lot of layers of cloth. Now, a gambeson was actually worn underneath mail and many forms of armor besides mail. Another term for a gambeson would be an arming coat. Now, in D&D, of all things, in D&D, so-called padded armor would be a gambeson. However, it's the weakest armor in D&D. Well, recent tests by various historians have shown that a gambeson is actually a pretty solid piece of armor on its own. It may not be as good as mail or plate, but it actually performed better than leather, which is the standard go-to light armor or medium armor for most fantasy games. Now, a gambeson was made from from linen, or what's called trigger cloth. This had a much lower thread count than linen sheets. Linen sheets, I mean, come on, those are, they're made for comfort. Whereas a gambeson was made for survival. And the end result is a gambeson wouldn't necessarily keep you from being injured if you were hit with a sword. It would reduce that injury, however, and would severely increase your ability to survive the hit. Now, you might still be taken out of action, but you would survive because you wouldn't have a wound to get infected. You would have bruises and soreness and possibly maybe a broken bone, but it wouldn't be a horribly bad broken bone. So, gambeson is a worthy piece of armor for a soldier. And again, you'd also wear it underneath your chainmail or your plate. Most middle period plate armors actually tied directly onto the gambeson, which is what I'm assuming happens with the shoulder armor this guy's gonna have, or this guy has. Alright, let's bring this around. Now you'll notice that when you draw in ZBrush, it makes the center of the next portion of movement the last spot where you finish drawing. So this means that your pivot point will move in space, or as Tim Curry said in a particularly famous 90s game, space! I'm sorry. Yes, Tim Curry actually did some pre-recorded acting for a video game. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to mark off seams on the shoulders. These are where the sleeves are sewn on to the body. I'm not going to have to worry too much about what's underneath the shoulder plate. Now, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make all of the subparts visible. This is what we currently have. And this is the point at which I'm going to save what we have. Save as Orc Body Z-Tool. Save. Now, next thing, let's go ahead and hide everything again. And the next step is to turn this into a linear padded gambeson. By that I mean, what's going to happen? We're going to go ahead and make this lazy radius a little bit longer. These lines are going to go straight down. Oh, while I'm thinking about it, there's one other thing, one other place I need to make a top. Here we go, top of the shoulder seam. And top of the shoulder will be coming out from underneath the plate, so it needs to be present. Okay, now no, that's too close. Bring it over here. Yeah. Alright. And there was a good one. Now we're going to drop down from here. And the end result of this is going to be that it is a series of long padding lines. Basically, it's a long quilt. But it's quilted in a line. Oh, too close on that point. All right. Let's bring it down through there. Sorry if I got quiet. I'm concentrating, trying to make sure I was doing everything right. Because if I do something wrong, it'll look really stupid on me. And as stupid as I can often be, I do not admit to being stupid. I do admit to occasionally being stupid. No, I do occasionally admit to acting stupid. And this is going to be the last of the lines. Going to need a little bit of further augmentation here. And frame, and let's turn on all of the bits and pieces. Okay, I need to select those legs and subdivide them a couple times, because what's going to happen is we're about to start blending everything together into one final cohesive piece. Which means there's one significant thing that we're missing on this orky guy. Can anyone guess what an orc would be missing that I haven't touched on yet? Anyone? Hello? What's going on here? Sorry, I got something that popped up. Okay, now the wrist cuffs doesn't need wrist cuffs, or as they're probably bracers. Well, three things that it needs, and I've just noticed a couple of them. The first thing I need to do is I need to tweak the muscles of the forearms. As things stand right now, these forearms have no muscle. So I'm going over here to inflate. I'm going to reduce the intensity, and I'm going to turn off lazy mouse. And I'm going to start building up the muscles of the forearm and the point of the elbow and the little bones on the side of the wrist. I'm going to smooth out what's going on here. And what's going to happen is, I go ahead, after I do this, I also have to make the elbow, because they got bony joints. Now, that's that forearm. Looks less like a noodle and more like an arm. Now this one. Oh. Yeah. To have this one coming all the way over because it's a twist. It's a twist. Now this one, the back of it won't be seen as easily because it's going to be behind a shield. But we also need to fill in the gaps in the fingers. So for example, right in here, we're going to swell it until it becomes solid. And there's a similar problem in the back of the thumb. Well, no, there's not. It's the back of the thumb. I just need to inflate there. Because see, again, in the rigging is not perfect. The rigging isn't intended to be perfect. It's just enough for me to get these guys into the basic poses, and then I take it into ZBrush here and do the actual job of making it live. Okay, now the next thing we got to do is, this hand is not a hand. This hand is a bunch of bent sausages. So what I do is I go ahead and I have to detail where the knuckles are and draw down the tendons on the back of the hand. And the reason for this is I have discovered that no matter how good a miniature is, if the hands look like sausages, the miniature will not look good. And if you've got a relatively simple miniature in terms of surface detail, but he's got really good hands, the end result is he will look like the surface detail is intentional. So it'll actually help make a less effective figure look better. So hands are super important. And what I do is I use inflate on the knuckles. Make them swell a bit. Then I smooth the spaces between them. And that helps make them look like fingers and not sausages. I mean, sometimes there's exceptions. See, already that hand no longer looks like bent sausage. Compare the hand and compare the right hand to the left. Just a few strokes, just a little bit of attention, and it looks miles better. And do the same thing with the thumb. And I smooth it just to blend it in. And the end result is a much better hand. Now I have to go back in with slash and slash between those fingers. Actually, let's turn off the lazy mouse and reduce the intensity a bit. Just to make sure that the difference between space between tendons and space between fingers is quite distinct. There. Much better hand. Now again, this hand will be mostly covered by the shield, but we don't want to do anything by halfways. We want to make sure we do everything right, because it will show. If you're lazy at doing hands, it will show. Now, like I've said this before, you don't have to use the programs I use. The programs I use are ZBrush, Daz Studio for the rigging, and I make my basic geometry, or I made it, in 3D Studio Max. You see, while Daz Studio is free, the rest of what I use isn't. I got it because I do 3D graphics for a living, so I kind of have to have the higher end programs. I use Daz Studio for posing because I'm more used to its rigging system, because my work involves making content for Daz Studio. I'm not going to put as much effort, but I'm still going to do the full Monty on it. Again, the hand would be hidden by the shield. And now we go back to slash, and we dig in between the fingers. Now this part of the hand will be visible through, oh, that one didn't do too well. We want to keep it trying down the line. And then, there we go. There we go. Oh, that's not where we go. Frame. Okay, now we load in the rest of the parts. The entirety of the orc is now visible. The entirety of the miniature is prepared except for one thing. And that one thing is a base. So I append another polymesh and switch to that, and I import. Again, you can't see what I'm importing from, but Oh, hell. Hold on. And there we go. It has a base. Now the problem is, this base is off-center, for one. And for another, it's way too far up. So with it selected, we go back to deformation, and we're going to move. Offset, as they say. First, let's offset it. There. Now let's turn off X and turn on Y. Lower it just a little. And now we need to offset it Z. And back to X, because it's still not far enough over. Frame, zoom out, and we have our orc. And his weight is mostly centered. Let's offset it by Z. Let's bring that base back a little bit. There. And that is our orc on his base. That's still too high. There we go. Alright, now just to make sure that the feet go through the base and fuse into a solid object. One solid surface with no gap there at the base. We're going to go ahead, we're going to inflate the bottom of the feet. Get a bigger brush. You don't have to inflate a lot, just a bit. That's more than enough. And now we do it to this foot. And now we make the base visible again. And you'll see that it, blends in. So we frame. Now, we're going to merge everything. So we're going to merge down. 1, 2, 3, 4. And there is, well, we still have to blend in down there at the ankles, but this will be our first basic orc trooper. So let's go ahead and we go back to geometry and we're going to Dynamesh it. Getting a lot of mileage out of that Dynamesh, aren't we? This one ended up a little bit rougher than I like, but this is a simple trooper. It's not a player character or an officer type. So what we're going to do is we're going to zoom around and we're going to blend in the bottom of these boots before we do anything else. And that will be the end of sculpting on Orc number 1 at an hour and 45 minutes into the stream. The only thing left to do is make it prepared for printing, because right now the geometry and the sculpting is done on Orc number 1. Now the problem is preparing it for printing. This is far too many polygons to print. I don't know if you can read it or not, but it's 740,000 polygons. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and there's a another feature in ZBrush called Decimation Master, and it has presets. For example, I want to make this as a miniature that's going to be going online at 35,000 polygons. That's 1/20th the size of the current. I click on a button, and I'm about to slow down, I'm about to get lag, and it analyzes, it calculates, it precipitates, it meditates, it correlates, and does a lot of 8s. It reorders, and bam. It now has 35,000 triangles, or vertexes, and 70,048 polygons. This will slice pretty quickly. And now I go up here, I export this as, let me put it back into where I'm supposed to be. I'm going to save this as Orc Trooper number 1. And that is our Orc Trooper number 1. And now we're going to go ahead. For right now, we're going to come back to the main camera. And that is how I make the basic figures. And I promised I would be on here for quite a while, so I've got at least 2 more orcs to make. I am going to take a very brief break just to make sure that I've gotten some things done. I have noticed that my popularity seems to be dropping off quite a bit lately, so I'm hoping that, you know, this extra long broadcast will help a bit. If you know someone that would love to watch this, please let them know. Please get them to come on in. And meanwhile, I am going to be paused briefly, so we'll be right back. Okay, so I'm back. Yes, I had to grab something to eat because I'm suddenly got really, really hungry. Now, I'm going to discuss a few things about one of the other programs that I use for work, for doing this, and that's actually going to be Daz Studio. Like I said before, this is our basic figure. If you weren't in here before, the big advantage of this program is that it makes it super easy to make different proportions, mutations, alterations, and transmutations. You know, that sort of thing. And now, part of the purpose of the sculpting, not purpose. Part of the purpose of this program is to pose and morph. It's literally just turning a dial. Now, you have to set the dial up first. Almost all of those dials that are right below me here are the result of me taking the basic human figure into ZBrush and sculpting into shape. By the way, they actually have this at Kroger's now. Yes. Go figure. Anyway, so you sculpt it into shape, and then you load it in, and there's a nice little command you can give it to where it changes the proportions to match what you've done to the mesh. And then you just freeze it, save it, and hey, you're done. And then whenever you load in, let me go ahead and turn Orc off just for a moment. And I'm going to show you, these are the bones. You can see the little diamond-shaped arrows pointing down each part of the body. That's what's called the bones. Now, when I turn these dials, they don't just sit there. They actually change to fit the changes that I have done to the mesh. The shoulders go wider, the feet get thicker, the head leans forward, and the jaw is a lot bigger. I open this jaw in the name of morphing. And we got Mr. Orky. But when I make him a human, he's a screaming human. Mr. Orky. Screaming human. Deep one. Make him a dwarf. Angry dwarf. Always angry dwarf. Angry elf. But no, this is supposed to be an orc. So this is what we're going to be working with. And I can even mix and match. When I created the orc boss, I mixed and matched the orc with ogre, halfling, little bit of troll, and the muscular morph to create this massive orc monstrosity. I lower the orc boss again and bring it to full orc. Or better yet, let's pull up the orc boss again. And I'm going to import the orc troop that we just made. Okay. Orc trooper number 1. Accept. Select it and X-translate. This is how big the boss is going to be, much bigger than the trooper. And again, also by comparison, file, import, and we're going to import the sergeant. And translate it. So as you can see, the orc sergeant is bigger than your typical trooper, but not as big as the full boss. However, all we are doing today is what we're doing next is the next trooper. So let's turn off the orc boss and turn on the full orc and zoom back in on him. Alrighty. Yep, that is a base human figure. That is the core of the figure, is a human. Because most of the characters are going to be human or human-like. Pardon me as I occasionally take a bite of burrito, microwave burrito with hot sauce and soda. Now, the previous one was mostly sword up here, sealed there. The next one, we're going to have them a bit more charging. There. Now, what we have to do is we have to decide how we're going to pose it. Let's go ahead and close that off right now. We'll decide on whether we want him shouting or not later. Now, let's go ahead and bring this side to side and forward a little bit. Just a little. Not too much side to side. And then we're going to bend the knee. And then we're going to bend this leg. We're not going to bend it, but we're going to side to side it in. Up, in. Bend the knee back. Bend the foot. Bend the toe. And then we're going to go to the front view and... Okay, it's mostly good. Let's just bend this foot back a little bit. Okay, well, that's good. That means that the legs are at least in a decent. And now, as everyone knows, when you put your left foot forward, your body twists to the right. That's side to side. Too much. There. And let's bend the arm. And Z rotate the shield so it's up against the arm. And then this lower the arm a bit. And select that forearm. We're going to unfold it. Now we're going to move this shoulder forward, down a little, and bring it a little bit more forward, and we're going to bend the forearm. And then we're going to twist the upper arm because we want it to be up like this. Okay, now I click on the forearm, but let's twist it a bit so it's more. Let's twist this. Alright. He's stepping forward with his sword up. I just realized that might be very similar to what No, the sergeant is raising his arm in triumph, not readying for an attack. So, Let's go ahead and, yeah, let's open up that jaw. Not as much as we did for the sergeant, but enough to, let's also bring the head down a bit more. And both of these are going to just have a standard angry brow, nothing really huge about them. Okay, and that is basically the pose for our new Orky. Alright. This is going to be very similar to how I made the previous Orc in terms of creating the clothing and the armor. The big difference will be the quilted padding. Now, let's go ahead and hide the hacker, the shield, what's going on? And the tusks. File, export, and that'll be Orc 002 body. Accept. Now we hide the skirt and body, make the tusks, sword, and shield visible. And file, export as Orc 002 props. Okay. Now what we have to do is let's go ahead and reopen, or not reopen, but go back to ZBrush. And yes, if you're just joining us, we are preparing to make multiple, well, we already made one Orc. Now it's time for his compatriot. And then append, Polymesh 3D, import Orc to props. As I said, right now, this is the basic Orc. Now, next thing we do is we go ahead and we hide the weapon and shield. We don't need them yet. And it's Orky, Orky, Orky. Aha, that's what I thought. We're going to go ahead and we're going to divide it a couple times. And that should be enough. Delete lower. And we're going to Dynamesh this thing. What that means is basically it's going to become one single solid manifold surface. And it doesn't look it on first glance, but when we zoom in, I smooth, you can see that in fact it has become one solid, smooth surface. Now, I'm going to go ahead and finish cleaning up this bit so that, again, it looks like the bottom of a tunic and not just one part meeting another. But what this does, this gets rid of intersecting geometry and helps us also have a more even distribution of polygons with which to sculpt. And smooth that, because again, this is going to be a tunic, not heavy muscles. Also applies down here. We need to get rid of that little wrinkle that comes from a mishap in the rigging. And the end result is frame. Yeah, there we go. We have the start for the next bits that we're about to do. So, I see that I only have myself and a lurker. Oh well, that's fine. Where's my... Okay, here we go. This is my Wacom. There are many like it, but this one is mine. And now the next thing that we're going to do is, I think this one, instead of having sleeves, will actually just have a sleeveless hauberk. Now, anyone who's watched this part so far, let's go ahead and shrink the brush. You know what's about to happen. I'm about to yeah. Draw a mask onto the geometry. And this mask basically will get turned into the edges of the garment. Okay, I see a problem there. So, gonna make it smaller. And let's make it bigger again. We're going to, oh, I need to smooth that. What is the matter with you? Anyway. Okay. Alrighty. Now I'm masking off these areas because they will become part of the tunic. And if you've never seen me before, you'll be asking how. If you haven't watched the rest of the show, you'll be asking how. Well, you're about to see. Need to go ahead and make this. Okay. And then I'm just gonna blend this over so that it'll be easier to mix and match this. Okay. Now what's going to happen is I'm going to now take this in. I'm going to use, in the subtool menu, I'm going to use extract. And bing. Oh, bing. And then it is now going to be subdivided. Or not subdivided. Dynameshed. And using the move tool, I'm going to pull them in a bit so that we can later blend it all together. Basically, the area underneath the head isn't going to really be seen when it comes time for printing. So we're not going to be as exacting with it as we are with everything else. Okay. Let's smooth that a little bit. Yeah. Yeah. I hate it when I can hear a political commercial in the other room. So yeah, we're working on getting this particular aspect all blended in. And once we do, we're going to be working on the rest of this. And just some of these things take a little bit more time than others. I've got something planned for this guy that's going to take a lot more time than the Gambison that his unit mate was wearing. Yes, this guy will be wearing mail. Okay, now we need to make sure that this is now what's going to happen next is we're going to go ahead and subdivide this a couple times until it's visibly smooth, and if we zoom in, they look about the same size. Yeah. And we're going to merge down. And then deselect. Alright, sorry, my throat's starting to get dry again. Now, what we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and we're going to geometry and we're going to dynamesh it again. And the end result is that I did it too soon. Control Z. And merge down. Oh, no. Oh, no, 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 no. Okay. I forgot, and let's split unmasked points. Okay, hide that. Okay. Did I get them blended in? Let's find out. No, I didn't. Okay, that's selected. Geometry. Dynamesh. There we go. Now I can go ahead and smooth the edges so that this turns into I want to say a sleeveless hauberk, but that's not quite accurate to what it is. It's almost a Byrne, but no, the Byrnes weren't as long. They were kind of like a sleeveless t-shirt of armor. And this goes way longer than that. I actually used to own a Byrne. And thus we have that is complete. The basic outfit. Now I need to make the boots. I'm gonna go ahead and give this guy cuffed boots. It's actually a little bit easier. And hello, Hannah. Well, oh, I just realized I've forgotten my lighting. Yeah. It helps if I can actually, you know, like, have proper lighting so I'm not like orange. Say hello to Hannah. Anyway. What we're doing here is we're making orcs. Now, on this front leg, it's almost straight up and down. Let's tilt it back a little bit. Zoom in. We're going to make our boot toppers now instead of later. No, that's slanted. Need to tilt it this way. Yeah, there we go. And then we're going to turn to the side. Okay, we need to tilt it like this. And then that's about right. Yeah. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to extract it again. Extract. Yay. Now we're going to accept. Yes. And then we're going to make the select the person, the orc rather. Now as boot cuffs go, they're pretty simple. They actually look more like manacles or something. So we got to go ahead and, yes, you heard right, dynamesh them. And we're not going to divide them yet because we got to sculpt on them for a bit. Now the first thing we're doing is we're taking a standard brush, much larger than we had it. There we go. And we're going to go and make sure that lazy mouse is off and lower that intensity quite a bit. We're going to just basically go around the bottom edge of the cuff, make it stick out a bit more. Okay. Now we're coming down around here. Like I said, ZBrush, like I said, rotates your model around where you last actually touched the model. So that can cause some issues sometimes. Now, The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to shrink this a little bit, and we're going to actually add in some wrinkles, because we don't want this to totally look like sculpted geometry, because we want it to be a little bit raggedy. And it's already looking a lot better. And now the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to use a slash brush, but on the positive. The reason being is because the bottom edge of the wrinkle, oh, that's still way too strong. Bottom edge of the wrinkle is actually going to be stronger than the top edge. It will also help when you get the time to actually paint these. It'll help it catch the paint better on a dry brush or stick out from a wash. So we got to exaggerate our details. Over the past couple of months, I have definitely learned that there are some details that just don't print well because I made them too subtle. They might print well on a resin printer, but on my FDM printer, not so much. Okay. Now, let's go ahead and divide that a couple times, just so that it has a nice smooth look to it, doesn't have that polygonal look. And we're going back to the orc body, and we're going to select the belt. We're going to do something similar to how we did it with the first orc. Now, we're going to select, and we're going to deselect the arm. Now, just like before, we extract it. Oh no, we've got some on the arm, on the hand. Let's remove it from the hand. Okay, now let's extract it and accept it and deselect it. We have a belt. We go back to the orc, and this time what we're going to do is we're going to make a shoulder piece that's, it's not just a cop like the previous two. This one's actually going to be more of a curved plate that's kind of rises up a bit from the shoulder. So let's hold the stylus in the right way. We're going to go ahead and select around the arm. And then down. And then we're going to erase the bottom of it, just to so we can sharpen up that bottom edge. Okay. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to extract it, but this time at 0.04. Extract. Accept. Now let's go back to the body and deselect where the shoulder pad was. Now we're going back to the shoulder pad, geometry, and we're dynameshing. What a shock. However, we're now going to expand that quite a bit, and we're going to move topological, and we're going to move it out. Make it more of an upright plate. Now we're going to shrink the brush and smooth this section so it looks more like a single plate that's arcing around the forearm, or upper arm rather. Okay, there we go. The next thing to do, let's go ahead and draw on the strap for this. So it'd be coming in up here. Just consider yourself at home. Consider yourself part of the family.
But I'm an orc.
And for those who don't know, by the way, did you know that the orcs in Warhammer are intended to sound like people from
Up north.
Scotland, Northern England, that sort of thing? And the infamous WOG isn't WOG, it's
War. Good God, yo.
Now, once again, we're going to drop this back down to 0.02 and extract out and accept the strap for the armor. Now, we're going to go ahead and geometry, dynamesh, divide, delete lower, undo dynamesh. Go to the bracer and divide, delete lower. Now what we're going to do is we're going to carve in a division, the trim area on here. Actually, no. Let's do it the old-fashioned way. We're going to mask off a section of this. And we're going to make the... No, that's too big. We're going to make our trim. Somehow, some way, we're going to make the trim. We're going to trim it all up and trim it even and trim. And so when we're going to make our trim, we're going to make it as nice and smooth as we can. And let's bring this around. Bring it down. And let's erase this in here because we want it to be a bit more round. Okay, and then here. Zoom out. Yeah, that'll do. And we're going to extract that. Yay! Extract. Yep. Except you have to exaggerate these details. If you don't exaggerate the details, they don't print well. Alright. Delete lower. 3. Divide, delete lower. And we're going to merge that with its trim. So merge down. and we're going to dynamesh this. So that we can smooth out the outside edges where the armor meets its trim. And by smoothing it, we're also able to go ahead and clean up some of these edges. Yes. And that's what we get. Frame. Divide. Now, the next thing that we do is we've got his weapons ready. Now what I'm going to do is, the previous couple have had a nice big belly plate. This guy's going to have a back plate. A big old honkin' stunkin', let's make this thing cover most of his back plate. And if you want to be able to sculpt something on the back, you can. I'm not going to add any details to this part, simply because, well, simply because if I make this have the emblems of the orc clan I'm designing, it'll only ever be able to be used for that clan. If I leave it as a blank disc with some trim, that's a different story. And since it's on the back, it's 0.03. Extract. Accept. Deselect. And dynamesh. Okay. And let's shrink them a lot. And let's smooth out the surface. Oh, too much. So let's bring the smoothing down. We just want to smooth it. We don't want to reduce it to nothing. Okay. Now let's shrink this down. Shrink this mouse down quite a bit. And let's inflate. Let's make sure we've got our lazy mouse on. Start at the top. And oh, not intense enough. Okay. I am at 4 people watching. Yay. Let's move this down a little bit. Let's increase the intensity to about 30. And let's draw around the outer edge. And the end result is a nice even trim, but what we're going to do is we're going to hit the number 1 key. And that has given us a lot more. We're going to turn off the lazy mouse, lower the intensity quite a bit, and let's see if we can meet the seam. Now, let's go into geometry and divide it twice, delete lower, and we're going to once again use slash to add some trim. Oh, too deep, way too deep. Turn on lazy mouse. Yeah, there we go. This is not for digging in a deep groove. This is for simply refining the angle where the trim meets the plate. No, that's way too Yeah, here we go. And as we follow the seam where the plate meets the trim, and it exaggerates and frame out. He's got a big old disc on his back. And let's go back to the subtool there. I'm gonna add something fancy. First of all, let's deselect that. Let's go ahead and then deselect that. This is going to be a couple armor plates to try and keep it from being quite as Warhammery. Okay, first things first, and then we're gonna give it a bit of back plate. Oh, let's make the back plate invisible. Now let's make it visible. And we're going to extract it, but this time 0.02. Extract. Accept. And there we go. Zoom out. And move. Okay. And what we have is the next orc. No furball. Well, he's not done yet. I still need to add a little bit to his tunic to make it a bit more tunicky and not so much of a shrink wrapper. Soda. Let's go ahead and hide the weapons. Next up is wrinkles down the okay, now these are going to be nice and okay, I think I need to go ahead and add in the slash exterior. Let's bring it back down to 8, yeah. And then, oh, I don't need, no, we don't need the, oh, see, when it's doing lazy mouse, it actually has less of an effect. Don't ask me why. Yeah. Now I'm going to clean those wrinkles up after we do the final shrink to not shrink, but Dynamesh. And slash. Sharpen bottom edge of these wrinkles. A lot of what I do is actually, or for these at least, is actually against what you would do for a more photoreal situation. Because what I would do for a photoreal situation, you don't want to do because the miniatures are, small scale. So therefore, they're not going to, it's going to either not be visible, or it's going to, even if it's not visible, even if it is visible, it won't look right. So I don't do a lot of things that are photoreal type things on my miniatures. Okay. Ooh, excuse me. Let's go ahead and make every last bit of this visible. That includes those. Now we need to increase the poly count of those so that they look smooth. Lower and frame out to everything. And this is Orc number 2. So we're going to now merge everything together by just simply merging down and accepting it all. And once again, we are ready for the last step, which is the hands. Before we mix everything together, we've got to make these hands look real. Or if not real, then at least we've got to make them look less sausagey. I mean, some of y'all have heard of salad fingers. Well, this is sausage fingers. He's happy to meet you. He sausages his fingers. No, fuzzball. Move. You don't want to jump in my lap when I've got my tablet up here. Yeah. Now we're doing the hands because I mentioned this earlier when I was doing the other orc's hands. Good hands can save an average sculpt. Bad hands can ruin a good sculpt. So you want the hands to be as good as possible. Always. And even just a little bit can help make these hands look a lot better. In this case, I just bulge out the knuckles on the back of the hand, and in this case I also bulge out the insides of the thumb, simply because we want to fill in those gaps in here. Now, I exaggerate the point of each joint, and I gotta add in zoom in and smooth as it goes. It's hard to see, I know, but it's happening. The higher the resolution, the slower things. Now, I need to do his musculature too, because unlike this guy, you can actually see his biceps and triceps. So what we're doing is we're making them out a lot bigger and doing it ever so slightly, just light strokes across the direction. we have to keep in mind things like the shape of the muscles. The triceps are actually shaped like a horseshoe when you look at them from an artist's point of view. The forearm muscles actually have a little pocket between them where the bicep inserts onto the bone. Get an elbow, a nice sharp joint there. That's good enough. We don't want him to be Arnold. Now, zoom back in. And we got to do it on this arm. Now, most of this arm, it's just going to be the forearm muscles and the came out wrong. The forearm muscles, because it's going to come around this way because of the way it's stretched. It's going to come basically counterclock, or well, depending on what you're seeing, either counterclockwise or clockwise. And we need to go ahead and make these hands a bit better. Shrink-a-dink-a-dink. Beep, 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 beep. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm not going to bother with making those any bigger than that because it's entirely pressed into the back of the shield. And smooth out where they meet each other. And then we're going to inflate inside the thumb because it will leave a gap if we don't. Okay. Now frame, and then we're going to make the sword and shield visible again, frame again. Now, we need to fill in that mouth. That mouth will collapse. Okay. Therefore, we're appending another sphere. And that's a big sphere. So we need to shrink it. Go to deformation, size, -100. Oh! I need to select the subtool. And then go to deformation and size, -100. And then -100. -50. Now, let's go to move topological. We're going to enlarge this as large as we can. We're going to move it up to the area of the mouth and start pushing it into place. Because the truth is we want this in here because we don't want the mouth to collapse. Now, shrink the mouse or the pointer. We're gonna push things in and get these out of the way. Okay, and bring it that way. And now we're going to go ahead and select our orky guy, and we're going to gently inflate his lip. Gently. There. And there we go. Now we're going to select our spear, inner mouth spear, and we're going to dynamite. We're going to divide it a couple times. Now we're going to merge down, and we have our basic mesh. There's one thing missing. We need a base. Import, and we go back to where I have my bases and select the raw base. Frame, and once again we are going to have to offset it. Offset it by Y, not X. And there we go. Now, fortunately, this one can actually fit properly. So, offset it by Z until the foot is entirely on it. There we go. And he's centered on the base as well, which is a good thing. We now have our basic orc number 2 with a blank shield and a blank back thingy. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead, geometry, first subtool, because we're going to once last time merge down, and now we have our orc, and we're going to dynamesh it. And we now have 1.728 millimeter vertexes and 1.745 million polygons. And if I smooth that, no. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is we're going to undo the dynamesh. Not undo, but we turn off dynamesh. And we're going to process it to 35,000 vertexes, 70,000 triangles. Oh. Or roughly 70,000. Okay. Well, I still have Hannah and Mr. Tangable. Waiting for this to finish. And we has it. I can smooth this a little bit and help clear up one of the bits of and this here too. We want to smooth that, make these wrinkles a little bit more innate. Zoom out, and we has one last thing to smooth. Yay! Zoom, and that's too far. Right in here with the mouth. smooth out the inner mouth. Now we frame it all, or home it all, and export this. We're going to export it as, well, the original. The first one was simply Orc Trooper number 1, so this is Orc Trooper number 2. And now we go ahead. We come back up here. I turn off ZBrush. That is the miniature we created last time. We're gonna translate him over. File, import, Orc Trooper number 2. Accept. Control D to drop to the floor. And now we have 2 basic orc troops, both with sword and shield and light armor. And then that's how far we've come so far. Yay! It is now 11 p.m. I have been broadcasting for 3 hours. That's actually quite a bit for me. Now, the next step is the big boss. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to break my promise. I can start the big boss, but I'm not going to be able to finish him tonight. My brain is already starting to have issues. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and reload back in our jointed base mail. But what we're going to do with them, we're going to go ahead and turn on the orc boss. Actually, no, we're going to turn off the orc boss, turn on orc, deselect, content library, load in the orc tusks, and load those tusks onto the jaw. Now, we go back in, drop them back down to nothing, and load in orc boss. Now, all I know about the orc boss is that I'm going to have his jaw wide open. Into the great wide open. And his head's probably going to be tilted back a little bit to make room for that massive jaw. And his brow is going to be really alright, that'd be 45, 18. And that gives us our angry expression. And we'll have to pick this up and continue it on Thursday, my Thursday show, because this is going to be a unique officer type specific character figure. So I'm going to be making custom weapons, custom headpiece, whole 9 yards to make this guy as badass as I can. So I'm going to save the scene as Orc Boss, lots of S's, and shift it back to the main camera. Yes. Look at this. She got her paw in front of her nose. And she's sniffing my hands and giving kitty kisses. Big old demon yawn. What you do? What you do? Oh, she giving me kitty kisses on the nose. Yeah. Anyway, so for those of you who have been watching on YouTube, yes, I understand a 3-hour video is a really long video. So I'm going to go ahead and do the usual. If you like this video, please hit like. Please subscribe to the channel. If you were watching this on Twitch, I will be back on Thursday evening to do the full Orc Boss sculpt. It should be quite a remarkable thing.
Yes, that's exactly what it's going to be.
So, let's go ahead and call it a night. What's going to happen is I am going to hold up my hand, this hand right here. And when I see my hand go to 5. No. It starts at 5. When I go to 1, there you go, when I go to 1, I'm going to cut the stream. So, let's go ahead and get this ready. That's a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.